today. I have Professor Coase John, somebody that has been more accomplished than anyone in our field, almost everyone. So I look up to him. So I'm very glad that he's with us also, so that anything I say, any mistake I make, he will stop me. and Coase will help us. And so to start with, the premise of this conversation is that it is just in the life cycle, I am not any different than you are. I am also a student of finance and accounting. The only difference is I am older than you.
Less hair.
I have less hair. Yeah, and less hair than you. And more importantly, also aiming, dreaming, the similar sort of thinking about finishing our paper, publish this paper, and so on. But the maybe one difference is that have experience, learning by doing, learning by observing, and you will find out that through my lecture is the key component of being an academic researcher. The key most important component is tenacity. First, be hungry about doing the work. It is not a shortcut. It is painful. You can get a shortcut and get something, okay, I like to get a job. If 2 scopus, I get a PhD. If 1 scopus, I become assistant professor. You can play this game. And that's the rule of the game of the land. I'm not going to go against it. It's not my job to go find out what's in your life. But my point is, if you want to become a researcher, make sure that you're hungry, you aim high, you have the tenacity, and you have the patience. Okay? These are necessary components before we talk about lecture, you do this, you do that, and so on. These are secondary. If you don't have that, if you're not committed to that, then it is not the best career for you. Okay? It's nothing wrong. We all do things, but it's not the best match. Okay? Of course, you're a professor, you also want to make sure your students are qualified, graduates, you think about your students are better than you. That's another side of our life. I'm not going there today. Okay? In our life, our students has to be better than us. That's our goal. And we keep that aside for now. But also our students need to see us as a role model for doing research and see us that we are not doing shortcut. Because the moment PhD students get the feeling you're shortcutting, you're also creating an image to your PhD student that I can also shortcut when I become professor. So you have to be very careful how you do that. So let's start. Okay, no more conversation, how to get published. I spent some time, I've spent some time, some of the slides I have taken from other people, cut and paste, so I have put it together. So you'll see increasing rejection rates in journals. Tremendous amount of pressure to the editors. Most journals in business, even those who are not 4-star, that in finance there are 4 journals, the top 4 journals, even they are not, the acceptance rate is less than 10%. In top finance journals, acceptance rates are, Journal of Finance 5.54%, Review of Financial Studies 8.5%, Journal of Financial Economics 10%. Desk rejects have increased dramatically. 70% of the paper goes to desk rejection. I edit a journal, it is not in this category. Okay? Even in my journal, the acceptance rate is 8%. Okay? Why? And my job talk today would be, how do you send your paper? How do you try to get not just rejected first? Okay? And then you will see what happens. First thing is to create a desk reject. Is not there, right? So you can see how competitive we are, and that's why we are all here, to see your own experiences on this issue. I'll go through all of them. I call it personal paradigm. Identify your interest. Okay? Don't worry. If you want, I will send it to you, but you have to send me first. I'll give you my email address at the end. You have to send me your research, current research, what you're working on, what's your proposal, to see you're serious. The moment I see you're serious, I will send you my slides. But I would not send you slides if I find that you don't have research agenda, you don't have any proposal, you don't have to have it completed. The moment you show me, you will get my stuff. Okay? I guess for you guys, it's no trade secret here for me. I'm happy to share with you. Okay? That way you can concentrate more. You know what I'm saying? So identify your interest. Okay? Identify your strength. Find a niche area. One of the goals as a researcher is to build a profile that qualifies you an expert in the field. Okay? So in the sense that if first is the topic wise, so if you figure out you like banking, okay, then you have to be careful. What is banking? And banking is not about writing a paper with bank data. Okay? If the question is not banking. And so in the sense that you create what's your interest. A lot of time interest comes from, you go to the professor and say, Professor, I need to finish my program and so on, and senior guy, okay, I have an idea, do this on banking. Oh, I'm a banking, okay? But I think the main perspective on this, what is your idea is, how many of you really spend some time to pick up 2-3 journals in the field and really read very thoroughly 1 or 2 articles without any need of doing research. The time is so limited, time is so focused, you create the time so little for school, for research, that you do not read a single paper. I'm not mean by you, I'm including myself in it, okay? So do not misunderstand me, I'm not trying to lecture you. I'm telling all of us, very few of us really spend the time to look at a couple of articles in a top journal on a regular basis without the need of that particular research as my own research. So how would you get an idea? How can you get an idea if you're not reading? So read to see what interests you, okay? And then kind of look at, is my interest is also as much valued in the literature or not? Talk to people, come to a senior guy, write an email to another person who you met through conferences, say, I'm looking into systemic risk. Do you think systemic risk is a good research idea? I will say no, it's not as much. Crisis is over, and too many papers are written. If your paper is about method, unless you can show your method can make other methods look bad, otherwise your paper is not going to go anywhere. Okay? So that's kind of thinking. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
I just want to add to what Iftekhar said. In social sciences, we are all in social sciences. In social sciences, packaging a problem. So even when you know generally what topic you're going to work on, exactly how you structure your topic, that can make a big difference. So that's where reading comes in. That's where knowing the different questions which has been, attacked in the field comes in. And remember what I did in my keynote speech, that is establishing the right links. So, that is, people have done on innovation and some institutions. Now, what is the next step, or what should be the next step? And then you can claim, in fact, you might have seen in well-written articles, they will say, some very important professor said, okay, the next step is to do blah. So the next step is going to do that. So what you're doing is, you're doing whatever you set out to do anyway, but you're structuring it in a way that, it's an important question, it's important to the field, and the contribution you make will be higher. The interesting thing is, the journals give you a break. The journals, their job is, as Iftekhar said, their job is to reject 93% of the articles, right? Nevertheless, if you have packaged your question as if it's an important question and it is going to make a significant contribution when you get results, you get a break. you get a break. The journals say, okay, he's not doing things 100%, but the issue is important enough, or the issue is new enough, or the issue is significant enough that we may give the author a break. And that is at all levels. At all journal levels, you get a break if you have packaged or structured the problem in terms of how important it is.
I also wanted to bring Professor Karaji, most of you know. He's the intellectual parent of many of the people here.
Yes.
And so go ahead.
He's the originator of the movement.
I'm sorry, I just arrived. But I would like to add, when I entered the room, I heard Professor Hasan saying something very important. He was saying, go and see how the papers are written in the journal. Now, you know how they do in, a top school in France, Toulouse School of Economics. In France, we're very proud of that school because we have a Nobel Prize and so on. The way that they work on their master dissertation, and they've been doing that for a long time, they just have to pick one paper, only one paper. And their whole master dissertation is just reading that paper and writing the dissertation, 50-page dissertation, on one and only paper.
So important.
And this is the way they do it. I mean, this might be an extreme way of doing things. I don't know if in top schools, and there are different ways of doing it. But most of the time it's a theory paper, so it means that, understanding the paper might take you a few months. Yes. So, but even sometimes the very, very, deep empirical papers also require time. I think what Professor Hasan said is very important, because if we do not figure out how a paper is architectured, how it's built, how deep people go into the subject, right, we do not have a grasp of what is required in research.
Yes.
Sometimes we think, okay, we throw one or two regressions, we solve the problem. But then, of course, after one or two regressions, we get correlations, but we do not get a deep insight of causality, of what's really happening, of behavioral aspects, and to go deeper and deeper. Sometimes we feel, well, when the paper is already written in a journal, we read it, we think, oh, it's so easy. But it takes so much time to make complicated things so easy. So
yes.
Sometimes we have one version, two versions, three versions, version number 30, 35, and in the end, when it gets into a journal,
Still get
a top
rejected.
journal, it still get rejected. But I mean, eventually, when we read it, we think, oh, this is so simple. But do not forget how much time people spend on making complicated things very simple. Like sometimes, people come and they throw 10 pages of equation. They think they did a great job. In fact, the difficult thing is bringing those equations, the 10 pages, into just one or two equations.
Agreed.
That's the hard. When we read the paper, we think, oh, that's so easy. But in fact, we have to, I mean, this is the way that I feel about it.
No.
It's sometimes so difficult to make difficult things so easy.
Yeah, sometimes we have paper takes 5 years to finish, okay? Honestly.
Yeah. Well, let's not depress people, but let's say we don't but at least it's not going to be just a couple of months. And this is the feeling that I sometimes have. It's because there's urgency, people have to go quick. I think that, a lot of time has to be spent. Of course, I'm not saying that people should do like Toulouse, School of Economics, but at least if people have not spent enough time on reading a few papers deeply, then they don't really get the best.
Let me just add just a quick, I'm going to emphasize what, so just to give you an example, if I were to write a paper on a topic, now I have been in the profession for more than 30 years. Iftekhar has been in the profession for a long time, so has Amin. Even when we write a paper, it's not, even though we are trying to find the relationship between A and B in a bunch of important contexts, when you approach the paper, you're looking at a checklist of things that the referee would expect to find in a paper. And even now, even at this stage, what I'm going to do is to find 2 or 3 very well written papers and follow many of the caveats that they have in the paper. So in other words, we are learning at this stage of the game. We're going to learn from those 2 or 3 papers which take care of most of the issues. Now the referee may raise some more issues, but believe me, the referee would have raised any of those issues which were followed in that 3 papers. See, the referees know these are the things to look for, these are potential problems, these are things that the author should have done if the author is a serious author. So this is so important. It is a mandatory. No wonder Toulouse does that. It's a mandatory part of writing a good paper which is targeted to good journals.
So you'll see in my presentation, I have actually created a list that need to go through before you send the paper out. By the way, I think they're taping us, so be careful about the words you use.
Oh, I'm
in the
sorry.
presentation. Yes.
So no,
They mentioned to us, but they're taping it. No. I just wanted to mention because
that's good to know. So normally we make it a practice to criticize other scholars, but we are not going to do that today.
you see this individual here. I give an example. His name is Deutsch. Deutsch is someone who has written extensively on corporate finance with the international angle. So sometimes I was criticizing yesterday about any paper you read and you say, okay, the evidence in Indonesia. You read something someplace and immediately before even reading the paper properly, some of the people I saw yesterday in the session, they think about, how can I apply this in Indonesia? I'll be done with my work. Research will be done. But here people do that, but do it a little bit carefully. If you look at Deutsch, he decided that he's going to go to an area, international finance, from the corporate finance, from the international finance concept, you look US listing gap in the stock exchange. Corporate policy, a natural experiment they looked at before and after Sarbanes-Oxley. Is US left behind globalization and IPO outside the US? Does cross-listing facilitate change in corporate ownership? Why foreign firms leave US markets? Private benefits controls of listing decision. If New York Stock Exchange has become less competitive, why do countries matter so much for governance? If you look at each and every one of these papers, he has written with the René Stools, was the editor for Journal of Finance for 12 years. Carioli is the editor of Review of Financial Studies. So he made a niche and said, I'm going to be number one about anything about cross-border listing, cross-border performance and so on. I'm going to be very, very good. I'm so good, I'm going to go and talk to them and attract their attention. He was also one of their students, so Ohio State people. I give you an example. Look at all the journals, JFE, JF, JFE, JBF, JF, JF, JFE, JFE, Empirical Finance, JFE, JFQA, JFE, and it is not as big one, but I'm telling you that how just taking that area, he has become a senior chair professor in the field. Okay, so create a niche what you like. You have to have a passion for it. You have to wake up in the morning as a researcher, as a person of that one. You don't wake up in the morning to think about how I quickly come back home. No, honestly, if you don't wake up in this way in the morning, nothing wrong with that. Then you know that it's not the job for you. Okay, if you're not waking up in the morning with anxiety that I need to get my research done, it is not done, my regression doesn't look good, my data needs to be clean. If you don't have that, then you are not actually getting the right mindset. Okay.
You're not waiting for the boss to leave so that you can leave immediately after.
Here is selecting a topic. You see, I go through each of these one by one. So let's go to the title. The first, selecting a topic. A good topic is one that creates curiosity in reader's mind. When the topic is too familiar, too mature, too similar, you don't get publication. You don't get attention. get attention. If it is a marginal extension of the existing literature, you're not going to get attention. Oh, he did this in this way, I did not use this variable, I created a non-linear, I did a different data set, it is marginal extension. It's okay, you can do that, but you're not going to get attention, okay? You're not going to get attention. If it is a too mature, contribution could be redundant, that early warning system of predicting bank failure, early warning system, and so on is a mature field. You're going to do a logic model. You might make it a multinomial logic model, but you're not going to do something different. So if you're working on something mature, you're not going to get that. Too similar to something else, avoid that, okay? When selecting a topic, you always think about in your mind, so what? Okay? Asking the question, immediately say, so what? Why it is important? Why people should care about that? What I'm bringing in the field? Build, and is it building, testing? Is it testing, building, extending a theory? Keep yourself in mind and keep on walking, keep on thinking, keep on walking, go to and answer to yourself, reading some other papers. That is it the case? You stick to it. Does the topic add to the previous knowledge and create entirely a new direction? If you feel that that is the case, you know that after that you kind of look at the importance, the relevance, is the data available. You can ask those questions later. Sometimes it could be possible that good data set available with your extending reading before can also help you to do that. Okay? Then I give you an example. Okay? I have some example. This is a event, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Right? You all the time we do things like this, like deregulation of stock exchange, deregulation of governance, deregulation of banking act. We have done, see, all the time. It's a little bit semi-exogenous. A lot of paper has done. So, in Journal of Finance, there are 44 papers between 2001 and 2015. There are 44 papers simply look at a story around Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Sarbanes-Oxley created more disclosure. Sarbanes-Oxley creates more earning management. Sarbanes-Oxley created firms to be more transparent. You name it, all around the topic that you like, you people tell a story around that. You go and see corporate governance. This is somebody, friend of ours. She wrote this paper about can you enter, you can list JF paper of hers, that how you come into US security market. Once you come in, you cannot get out of there. You know, this is a paradigm of a song, but I'll come back to it later on. Why do foreign firms leave? And effect of SOX. I give you examples. So in some sense, you create a topic of your life. Then I go to title. Be creative about the title. Okay? I brought this thing I put this morning. This slide. Because I saw last couple of days the title is like you want to put the whole abstract in the title. I saw the whole abstract is in the title. Okay, this empirical evidence from Indonesia. It's like so. Title is an important one. Include the main concept, the context, the research method. Better to prepare. I'll give you some example. You want to be very creative with the title. Okay. Good title should be between 8 to 10 words. Not necessarily, you have to all the time. But a good title is very short, simple, straightforward. Certain key variables of the topic focus. The title determines how your article gets indexed in various databases. Okay? Compare following two titles. The determinants of total factor productivity, TFP, evidence from China. TFP and China's miraculous growth and empirical analysis. Reading this title, you automatically would know this is written by a Chinese guy. Stereotype. Reading this one, I would say that, well, he could be Chinese guy, but he got educated in a No, I'm not making fun. I'm just honestly, sincerely bringing this issue. Honestly, sincerely bringing this issue. Nothing negativity in my intention, in my heart, nothing. I'm just going through our own problem, which I also have, just like you do. Okay? And so here, Catchy title. A dog that did not bark. Insider trading and crashes. I just picked up some things, right? So that's my friend, her paper. You can enter, but you cannot leave. So you might not know some of the catches. It's about Hotel California. Okay? Yeah, you can check in anytime you want. You cannot leave. So she created that, right? Social capital: the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, this is a title that came from the Western movie. Long time ago, there was a cowboy movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and they used that one to use that the social capital could be in a good. Some of them could be terrible. They've done self interest and so on. Practicing what we preach, the geographical diversity of editorial board. I did it intentionally to bring in that there's not diversity as much in the board. And this is one of my paper. Beauty is in the eye of beholders. Okay? So happens is, that doesn't mean the paper would get published. But it kind of makes the reader immediately say, what are you talking about? Interesting, let me see. And creating that itty-bitty interest is worthwhile to person to go a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's what my lecture today is, how you attract the referee to go from title to abstract to the introduction. By the introduction, if you make referee to be interested in you, then the only thing you have to do is that your methods are correct, okay? But you already brought the person to say the research question is important, okay? So the title is important. Creating value by changing the old guard. Okay, I like that title. Why? Because most of the referee were older people. They immediately say, what are you talking about? They're changing the old guard. Okay? Are they changing me now as an editor? You know, that's the first thing comes in. So you do that. Okay? Then let's go to abstract. Most journals these days have an abstract count. Usually 100 to 200 words. In finance, it is between 100 to 150. Finance, there is no journal, it has 200 anymore. Top journals are all 100 or 150. Okay? Abstract is crucial because editors not necessarily read the entire paper. Because editor gets 700-800 papers, 1,000 papers. Editors are not reading all papers. Editor looks at immediately the title and the abstract and see what this abstract is talking about. Is this attractive question? Is the research question, is a so what test meant? Is it something that the readers would be interested? And he or she does not wait to see whether it makes a contribution to the literature or not. They send it to the referee to decide that. Okay? Referee can decide that, but they make a decision and they kind of look at this abstract, so it should draw attention, convey a feeling of importance, relevancy, and curiosity. These three things you have to convey in your abstract, in writing your abstract. And if that means you completely write it in a language that is a little bit different than the way your introduction is written, it's okay. As long as it reflects the overall. The content and quality of abstract is important, and I see that. I see a lot of articles come to me, and I sometimes see that the abstract is this long. The whole first page is an abstract, okay? And then I don't laugh about this. I feel sad. I feel sad is because the person is working hard. Somewhere, some country where it is not in the center of attention. And I sympathize because that person has a dream like me and is working hard, right? But because of the lack of exposure, lack of understanding how the system works, the person automatically made me to reject the paper before I go into to look at the paper, because I figure out if I really have to teach him or her abstract, I'm not going to deal with that. I don't have the time to dedicate myself to see somebody from a small country, small school. I'm going to build them up. I figure out I'm not going to do that. Okay, so it is important. One or two key finding and key contribution, and sometimes avoid any acronyms, abbreviations, and so on. Don't put that unless it's extremely known, like SEC, Security Exchange commission and so on. Those things are okay because sometimes these are known to everybody 100% in the field, right? Otherwise, no. Not going to spend time, but you can decide that it has to be. You think about if you do an ideal abstract, you can, in 100 words, you should be able to bring the background, the research gap, topic, theory you draw on, research method, result, implication, all of these done, but don't worry about implication because it's impossible to put implications in 100 words. Okay? I got some examples, yeah.
When you're done with this, before you go from the abstract, I want to make a couple of comments. So everything, so here in the abstract, there is a little trade-off in the practical world, which I want to point out. So, one, the abstract is an important mechanism that you speak to the editor, right, who is finding the referee, or the AE or whatever. So, you know, that is an important part of the process. Now, as Iftekhar said, 100 words, you're constrained, even communicating exactly what the article is about. So, you give a background, well, you want to speak to the editor, but the abstract is meant to be written to the expert. So in other words, in the introduction, you're going to provide more details of the background and so on. Ideally, the abstract is meant for the expert, somebody who is in the field, potentially. But in the practical world though, as Iftekhar was saying, you would want to give quickly a little bit of the background, because the editor may not really be the expert that you're speaking to, you know, with respect to the article. So what I used to do, this is a practical advice, is that in the first round, when I submit the paper, I would violate, if I can, the 100-word rule, you know. Why is that? Because I want to do a couple of those things. I want to give a little bit of the background. I want to also at least put down my main and surprising the results. All of that usually takes me about 150 words, you know. And then once I go through the referee process, eventually they're going to cut it down to 100. But that can happen in some journals in the you know, process of second round and third round and so on. But now there are some journals though, they won't look at the paper until the abstract is 100 words. So there, of course, you have to write a 100-word. You know,
you will not be able to process it because the system would not process if it is more than 100 words.
Yes, but so there is a difference though. Even now, some journals you get away by writing a longer abstract. So these are things to talk about, but all these issues are very important. Abstract nowadays, I don't want to scare you, that all journals are doing a larger fraction of what is called desk reject. So what is a desk reject? The editor, just by reading the abstract and the title, so that's where the title is also important, the editor sort of makes a determination. You know, suppose this paper went through a multitude of revisions, competent referees, you know, suppose the paper went through all those rounds, am I still going to publish this paper? For various considerations. Is the topic important? Is it interesting? Is it relevant to my readership? You know, or I basically don't like the story. All of those are good reasons why many editors now reject a certain fraction of the papers without sending it to a reviewer. So that's called desk reject. And the abstract does play a role in affecting the probability of your desk reject.
So you'll see that I gave an example. I give enough time. I have many things I want to cover, and you'll see that It brings a research gap, it brings a research topic, theory, what method. So I gave an example from each of the areas that I talked about in the previous slide, that what could be a way to do this. Now, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if I take all of this, it's not 100. But I give an example from each. Based on your paper, you can decide how to create the idea on this one. So with the idea, the first paper I had about the editorial board, and you can see that using that I have talked about how the editorial board is underrepresented a lot. It's a research gap. People do not know about that. We focus on the characteristics of the editors to find out what is their background, and the theory is social identity, whether it's the stereotype, and this sort of theory are the underlying theory to look at the representation in the editorial board. What sort of method, collect a long-term number of years longitudinal data, we look at this sort of journals, we create this, overall we found, what you found, and implication. So I gave an example, doesn't mean you is one of them, but I wanted you to keep that so that you ask yourself in your abstract, am I touching the points? Am I touching these points? And I wanted you to checklist yourself. And okay, I took it from somebody, this one, I like that, it's a good example. Foreign firms terminate their Security Exchange Commission registration aftermath of Sarbanes-Oxley because they no longer require outside funds to finance growth opportunities. So, you'll see that I create 2, 3 examples like this I want you to see. I want you to see, go and look at this paper, and I took it from other people, so it's okay for you to see them. And I think you'll see that these are good examples that how they have quickly put into the research question, gap, and the main finding. Okay, I got 7 examples, so let's move into the next conversation. Introduction. Introduction, the way the finance literature, most of you, if you're in finance and accounting, the profession has moved into an area. It's a little bit different than your dissertation paper. Your dissertation paper, you will have introduction. You have introduction. You will have a literature review section, right? A literature review and so on. Because the journal page is limited and so on, in finance and accounting these days, they expect within the introduction, you are going to not only introduce the paper, you talk about the existing literature, what is the review section. Now they say, we don't want to give you space to say, oh, such and such said that, such and such said that, and the professional is saying, we all know this, okay? Just tell me in a quick, tight way, what are the key papers, where's the gap? And that's why you'll see those of you in management, and those are, this is not important now, I just wanted to stay here to my point. The answers would be value-added contribution, so what makes a difference, what problem it solved, how this is different than earlier approaches, and how this is superior. So you'll see all the top journals, if you open up today, the top 3 journals, 4 journals in the field, you'll see in the introduction, they will have 2 paragraphs to 3 paragraphs that will say why this paper is important. First, this paper is the first one that looks at this particular question and Second, it ties this literature with previous literature in the area of some other area literature. So they will spend 3 to 4 paragraphs to show 4 or 5 different ways to say this paper makes a contribution. If that is not there, you are automatically, person is assuming that you are not making a contribution. Okay? Because it's the style of the writing. Even if you have contribution inside, but if you don't say it yourself in a very organized way, me as a referee, you're taking 2 years to write the papers, I'm your referee for 1 afternoon. Okay, 1 afternoon I'm rejecting with the null hypothesis in mind, I need to get rid of quickly, I want to reject the paper. because accepting revised resubmission means I have to write a lot more, and rejection means I can quickly reject it, right? So remember, you have to make the life impossible a little bit for the referee to say no, you cannot reject the paper. They are showing 4 different places they have made the contribution. Again, a good introduction should be who cares, what do we know, what we do not know, and so what. What is new? How does your study fundamentally change, challenge, and advance previous understanding? It has to be there in your introduction. If it is not, then you need to rewrite it. Okay? You need to rewrite it. Absolutely, this is important. You would not go forward. We cannot move forward to your regression, your data analysis, your fancy statistics there you learn something. Those are less important. What statistics you're talking about? How many of you and how many of us really go to the fundamental of econometrics and know the underlying theory? All we know is data and push the button. So if you tell me in a regression 3-4 pages of statistics and so on, I immediately know that this person is hiding behind statistics. Okay? The moment I read a paper, the moment I see they're spending 3-4 pages on regression, equation and so on, I immediately know they're hiding behind it. They don't have as much to offer because none of them are new. They're taking it from other journal or other book. So don't show off to me about your statistics capability. You are pushing the button. Even that you write in the email to somebody else and say, I have a problem, can you help me with this data? And somebody gives you the data code, okay? So I'm not impressed as an editor, as a referee, okay? So I want to make this point. Absolutely create these points. In economics, it's 1 to 1.5 page. In finance, they give us more space. In introduction, because we don't have literature review section. So you can go 4 or 5 pages, and it's okay. Editors, reviewers read the introduction. Lots of time, editors also read the introduction and decide to just reject from that. And the readers read them to decide whether they want to read the full paper. It is not unusual to spend 1/3 of your writing, entire paper, 1/3 of your time, 1/3 of your effort you put in perfecting this introductory section. We don't do that. We spend data collection, takes 2 years to get one data set, okay? If we don't work hard, okay? And then running the regression, so on and so forth, another 6 months, 1 year. And then you said, introduction. No, 1/3 of your time. And as I got older, I spent most of the time on that because my junior authors, others are doing a lot of the groundwork and so on and so forth. What is my value added? I spend time on to see whether it is not. So I request you to all the time carry your abstract and your introduction pages printed anywhere you go to a meeting, faculty meeting, go in the backside, keep quiet and keep on looking at your abstract and think in your mind, okay, how can I change? You change one sentence, one word and so on. Continuously do that several weeks before you finalize your paper. I do that, that's what I meant. I kept on carrying my abstract with me, introduction with me, and because sometimes you go to meetings, you don't have anything to offer, right? And so you go a little bit on the back and keep on thinking and so on. It's honest opinion, normal. I mean, sometimes, yes. I will move to the next one. Literature review, theory, hypothesis, methodology, and result and finding. If you notice, in my importance to this, how quickly I went and put all 4 of them into one group. Okay? Now this is hard work, but I am not putting a lot of importance here. This is a part of this, it's a labor. Okay? You put some time, you put some effort, it's all good, but you are not publishing a paper with your literature review. I give you a related topic. Anybody presenting a paper in any conferences from now on, and if you remember my lecture, and if you agree with me, you get only 20-25 minutes, right? Do not spend time at all with literature review. We are not there to listen to other people's paper. We are here to listen to your work. You can simply put one slide by saying 2 important papers in this field has shown this and this. My paper actually comes and show that the gap is still there, and I am going to give my paper on this. This is my research question. Other than that, those people spend time under literature review. Immediately my brain says the person is hiding towards not giving his or her contribution enough. Okay? I can tell you how I'm thinking. I'm thinking means that's the way Coase is thinking, that's the way Amin is thinking. Okay? Do not spend time. Because you are a PhD. We got your degree. Don't have to tell me about literature review. I'm an expert. I'm an expert in the field. Okay? I know I'm a referee. I'm just talking as a referee. I know already. So I can quickly figure out the contribution. Don't spend time. Not only in writing. I'm going away a little bit by saying even on your presentation. Spend the time on what you have done, how that is important, how that adds value. That gives you an ability to look yourself good in front of people. See, when you go to a conference, you're presenting a paper, you are selling yourself potentially to other employer. Okay? So that person is coming from Putras, from what's your name, university in Malaysia, and the other university is from some other place, right? People say, oh, this lady is good. You know, this is wonderful. So this is something you create a value. The moment you create and hide against statistics and literature review, you do not stand out. You do not create a value for yourself to the others. You can go and tell people, I went to the conference and tick mark, 2 points for my job. You can do that. But if you want to flourish, remember this point. Okay? The literature review should provide justification for your research. There is a gap in the knowledge. You contribute to the original findings. You know the main arguments on this area. The existing literature is either consistent with your literature or contradicts yourself with that. How your research would resolve the difference. These points should show up in your literature review. Okay? To ground your hypothesis in relevant theories in 3 steps. Motivating your hypothesis and the underlying theory. You position your hypothesis on that. So you kind of go and say, this particular area, people have done that, and my research is going to ask for this. You kind of ground yourself in a way and develop a logical argument why the main variables are related in the proposed way. So yesterday people were showing some paper I was in a session, how CSR or stakeholder theory is impacting performance and so on. And in that particular case, you're going to go back to the theory and you say, Milton Friedman is a macroeconomist. No, Milton Friedman wrote his first paper on the macroeconomic theory where he said that stockholder maximization takes care of stakeholder. Okay? So you're making the argument that you don't need to worry about stakeholder, you need to take care of only stockholder. That's the first argument from the traditional classical theory of the microeconomics. Then you say, increasingly, people from management, economics, and others. Okay, you can bring people like the Michael Porter and others, and so on. They increasingly bringing the literature of a stakeholder, and these are employee, this could be community, and others, and so on. There is a sustainable long-term profitability comes from that, and there is a contribution. Then you can say, but both of these perspectives are not thinking about that environment is a big issue. Environment is not properly resolved, then employee, others, and so on. Environment is a significant stakeholder that has correlated to stockholder, correlated to this. I'm just making up this stuff of my head. You can bring that one and say this particular paper actually directly looks at the environmental factor into this picture and see how environment matters in firm performance. And environment is also key component because increasingly the investors, the buyers, the borrowers, all are concerned on that. And then you can say, look, in last year in New York Stock Exchange, 40% of the investors are interested in value investing fund. That shows that increasingly the investors themselves are looking into that value investment fund or socially, what's the right word? Socially, your student has a hedge fund.
Oh, socially, corporate social responsibility.
Something, no, it's a socially involved fund, that it has grown a lot, and you say, look, without doing business, without the environment, we are not looking at the whole question, so my paper comes in that. That way, you're making a value for your paper on the literature. Reviewers identify 3 common mistakes: lack of specificity, fragmented theorizing, stating the obvious. So if you jump writing one theory from one place and quickly go to the other papers, another theory, quickly go to other, then you think I have covered all 3 theories. No, it's not going to make an impact on the referee. You make sure that the argument is very simple, straightforward, based on the other aspect. I learned a lot. We have a colleague, a good friend of Professor John, and his name is Anthony Saunders. So when I was a young professor, I actually learned something from him. And I didn't share this with you. Tony always asks a very simple question, and not in a negative way. Very simple question. How important are fees? Recently he wrote an article in Journal of Finance. It's how important are fees? And other people are thinking, covenant, derivatives and so on, making big deal out of the big deal scan data and so on. And he said, how important are the fees? I learned from him, you ask a simple question.
In addition to the interest rates.
Yeah.
The fees.
Yeah, I'm coming. So in the sense, then he goes in the literature and say, no, there are 100 papers. They all focused on interest rates, if the income from the interest. But none of this paper looked into fees. I'm the first one looking at fees. And guess what? By bringing fees, I find the previous result don't show up to be same. Fees make a difference. So guess what, guys? You do research in the future, fees are important. Okay, that's it, Journal of Finance. There is no equation, there is no statistics, nothing. And this is the recent one. But when I was a young professor, assistant professor, associate professor, I always liked because I was impressed. How did this paper get in? Okay, then my paper, how did this paper get in? I didn't know that time, Tony Saunders, okay? Then as I got matured, I figured out, this man is clever. He doesn't spend time too much about, mumbo jumbo, okay? Yeah, he clearly says, hey, this is a question, it's not answered. And I'm going to write it in a way that makes you to be hard for you to reject the paper. Okay?
Or to ignore the issue.
Or ignore the issue. And try to see, you can do that. Why? Because if you're not technically operation research person, if you're not econometric theoretician, so in this case you have to find a niche, and the niche would be a very simple research question and build the underlying theory, means the hypothesis, very clearly on that research question. You don't have to answer 50 different things. Okay? Just very focused on this case, why fee is important. Okay? Methods. Those are Is it a qualitative, quantitative, survey, experimental? Is it cross-sectional? Is it time series? The procedure that you are, how do you get the data collection? What is the sample procedure employed? What's the sample size? And so on. This section, I have a strong suggestion, is that you create as detailed as possible, even if it is 20 pages you need to write it in the first draft. 20 pages, detail. I started with 200 and make a table. Out of that 200,000, I lost 11,000 because of this reason. 12,000 I lost because the asset R&D variable was not available. I lost another 3,000 because our advertisement not available. Create that. Make that later on appendix. It gives some respect to the referee that you simply did not run a regression, did not even worry about what your N has become 823 from the overall data available for 3,000. I see most young researchers are in many places, I don't know. 820 cannot say. That means you're not spending time. You do not know your data. You're not looking at your data properly. How you lost from 10,000, it becomes 823. Which variable are missing where? You can do all of them descriptive statistics. It has an N, it has a mean, it has a max. You can see mean 0, 25 percentile 0, 75 percentile 0. So you know that where you're losing things. Absolutely have a strong idea. Every detail about your data set. At the end, you will not be able to make the 17, 20 pages in your paper. You have to make them into 2 pages, but create the detail. It does 3 things. It reminds you later on when the revised resubmission come in, when somebody asks you for a data 3 years from now, when somebody does, so these things you do. All the code, you do. And I teach something to my student, and some of you are my students, some of my colleagues. Something good practice is the following. Most people write, we did a robustness test. By adding this, adding that, result remains the same. Make sure each of the statement you make, the result that you get, put them into a table, put the code and save them in the folder. Okay? Because you're in 17 different papers. Later on, somebody comes and say, let me see your robustness test. Then you have to go back and say, hello, do you have the data? And what is that? Like this and so on. He will go to the junior professor and say, do this again. Don't do that. Keep this in the folder. Just like the data section I mentioned. Keep in the folder. Trust me, it does 2 things for you. It also creates you to be confident and comfortable about the data set. That makes you, next time you read another paper, you quickly say, oh, that data set I saw, these are missing, these are available, and so on, I can collect this here. So knowing the data set, your own data set very well, serves you to write new papers. Okay? If you don't know your data set, somebody else is doing it for you, and you don't have a control on the data set, yes, you can get the paper done, but you know inside you don't have the strength about thinking about this in the future. Okay? I'm an empirical person. It's my strength when I was a young person. So this is important for me to know the data very well, because if your English is not your first language, if you're not a good English writer and so on, so writing may not be your skill. Writing is not your main skill, and your data collection and data process and estimation has flawed, I'm not interested in your paper at all. Or not interested about doing co-authorship with you. Okay? So what you're going to bring on the plate? Okay? I saw something yesterday, and I wrote this one today, this particular slide. I saw a paper. Mismatch between the research question and the design. I saw a paper, I was chairing the session. Okay, there's no match. Okay? And got the opposite result. So that means that you didn't have time to go back and change it. Completeness, clarity, and credibility. Complete your argument what you started, right or wrong. Keep it simple and make it credible. Credible means what? You say that, consistent with Deutsch Carioli's tools 2010, our paper does the same thing in collecting this data and implementing the variables. Okay? And so on. and so you create that. Then we go to the conclusions. Those of you are coming from the field of management. Are you any colleague of mine from the management field? You have to, in management field, they have to have a section on discussion. Then you discuss about the relevance of this paper, how it is, and so on. In finance and so on, we don't have a subsection of discussion. We directly go to the conclusion, and here, sorry, I didn't talk about the results and findings. No, I forgot. I did not spend the time. After you put the method, you go into results. So one thing that I learned from a co-author of mine, I have to give him credit. This is something I learned. I worked on a paper in the early 90s with Bob DeYoung. And what I learned from Bob DeYoung was, the moment he writes his results, he immediately spends at least a paragraph in talking about the economic significance and elasticity of the coefficient. Okay? And that's something I didn't do before. I say it's positive, it's negative. Significant, I'm done. It's positively correlated, negatively correlated. Done. No. You spend some time by saying, okay, let's look at the coefficient in the first column. So you create elasticity, right? You know how to create elasticity. And you say, a 1 standard deviation or $100 increase in this particular income influences the consumption by this amount. So then you can even say, in the context of a small community, this kind of income is a huge impact on consumption. So you stretch your result a little bit more. Okay? And this is something is important. The table, that's something we did not grow up with when I was a graduate student, PhD student. This is something I grew up in last 15 years only. It's called the JFE, JF style. It did not exist in JF, JFE before. Which is, the table will tell you the entire story without reading the paper. I don't need to go to the paper to read your table. The table would have a ledger, this much, which will say, this table is looking at the determinants of fees. It's looking at fee as a function of, and then all the variable names are all written down that you have in the variable section already. Or in your appendix, you put the whole thing in the ledger. Make the ledger a little bit smaller font, but it has to be there. It is kind of like a style.
Mike Jensen, who was one of the early editors of JFE, used to say, I can take any table by itself from an article, walk into an MBA class. Now, MBAs are not necessarily experts, but discuss the whole paper based on one table, the central table, and it would actually make sense to them. In other words, he just Xeroxes one table, walks into the classroom, gives it to the students, and he'll be able to discuss the paper. That was the rule. And JFE is the first one to adopt that, and then of course JF and other journals follow.
All of that, yes. The JFE is the first one actually. Before we used to say, just look at the JFE style.
Yes.
But now JF adopted it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
many journals do now.
Yeah.
Something similar. Yeah.
So what it does is a little bit tedious work, extra work, but
And it seems like a redundancy because you have 12 tables, many of the variables are exactly the same, but still you carry the ledger. That is, if you look at any one of the tables, you can tell the story.
And also be careful that if you're not focused very much, you'll copy the table and you would not go through the detail in each table, and you'll make a mistake and it's, oh, sorry, it's just a typo. It's not a typo. It's not a typo. It is, lack of a better word, laziness. Okay? Or not sincere, serious. Okay?
At a minimum, sloppy.
Sloppy.
Yeah. You're not being the scientist.
Yes. It's not like I don't make that mistake, so I'm criticizing myself. Okay? So
And regarding the tables,
Yeah.
the way that you unroll the tables from table 1, 2, 3, the way you unroll them will tell the whole story. Sometimes people say, I need to understand the whole paper by looking
At the
different
tables. That's true.
From table 1 to table 8, and I will not need to read the paper. I will understand
The logic.
the logic and the
Yes.
main story, the main point. of the
Agree,
paper.
agree. Sometime in the descriptive statistics, whether you're writing the paper or you are presenting the paper in a conference, the descriptive statistics correlation table, you simply put it and say that there's nothing surprising in the descriptive statistics. So I create a rule for my PhD students, and maybe Irwan, you can employ this for your student is, when they're writing the first paper, all the variables that they are finding as the descriptive statistics, they have to show me 3 other papers' results on the same variable and see what are their descriptive statistics. Okay? It does some work for me. I immediately check out the data is correct or not. Okay? So if the 3 papers have a similar sort of range of descriptive statistics, I have a confidence. Otherwise, I don't know my student yet.
You should also look for another country.
Yes, in a sense, yes. In the sense that you suddenly find that debt ratio in Indonesia, your average is 96, and everybody's debt ratio is 50 to 60. Either you have a good idea, 96% Indonesia, it is great, or you're making a mistake. Okay?
Reviewers, they look at the descriptive statistics. It's the first thing they look at. Because more than that, there are big mistakes that we see.
Yes.
Like the ratio of loans to total assets is 120%.
Yes.
This is
That's
impossible.
it. That's it. Immediately the paper is not going anywhere.
When you look at the max,
Yes.
right? The max is 110%.
Yes.
This is impossible. So it means the data, has not been.
It's not clean.
Right? And this is immediately the first thing that we look at is the description.
Exactly. And the moment I see mistake, I lose respect.
Min and the max.
And most of the time you find out if a paper does not give mean and max, means they're hiding the
Yeah.
descriptive statistics, okay? They'll put mean, standard deviation, okay? And then say 25 percentile, 17 percentile. This is indirectly telling that really don't want to bring this.
Weird things are going on.
Weird things are going on, and the referee knows that. Okay, but you yourself look at these numbers and spend, honestly, this is something important for me, honestly spend a lot of time on the descriptive statistics and clean it, look at the Windsorizing, all details, so on. Don't take a log of assets and look at the descriptive statistics. What do you understand log of assets? Are you that good that you can tell me by looking at log of assets what's the average size of assets? You cannot tell me. So you keep the main variable for yourself, loan, assets, debt, each of the variable without making the ratio, which even though ratio is your important variable in your mind, right? But keep the main variable also separately and look at their mean and max. It gives you comfort zone about your data. Okay? And it gives you, what is comfort zone? Because once your data set is clean, you can use this data set to ask other question immediately. If you're writing a dissertation in one particular area, right? Keep that dissertation data and continuously add columns. So let's say you found out standard deviation of earning, ROA, standard deviation by taking previous 3 years window of standard deviation. Keep that column in your data set. Then you made a variable about GDP per capita. Keep that variable. What happens? Your data or SAS data set is clean, it's there. You have confidence about the data set. Suddenly you went to the seminar, you found out Professor Amin Tarazi is giving a paper about something that is using European data. You say, that's something. I have those variables in my data set. You come home and you check it out. That paper, whether in your data set it shows up or not. If it shows up, it's a bingo. I might have an idea. Let me send. So I do that a lot. Clean the data set very much and keep the data set ready. And you can see your productivity will be higher. Again, if you go to discuss your paper, conclusion and so on, again bring the question, so what? Why this paper is important? Why you making a contribution? How it is impacting theoretical distribution? And how it is creating this? And the bridge between the existing study and the new finding. These things will come in your discussion or conclusion. I think conclusion is something that if your introduction is very good, your abstract is very good, you can bring things from there and put the conclusion again. Even if it's a repeat, it's okay. Because by the time the conclusion comes in, you already either win over the referee or you are rejected. And then you again make the referee happy that I'm so happy that you have come through this point. And I'm emphasizing again, the key contribution for me is nobody has done that. I'm the first one brought it. This creates a new gap in the cover a gap in the literature. It is consistent with such and such, such and such. And the future studies may look into the variation of this and so on and so forth. So you're making the referee to feel comfortable and confident and say, yeah, this point. I'm agreeing with that. Okay. So I gave you the paper I started with, Sarvin-Oxley, kind of praised this one and said that it goes again. This paper examines the reason underlying the recent increase, so it's something from the abstract, and this takes something from the introduction, and they write the paper, okay? Taken from to the other sections. References. Even that, how many of you use the software EndNotes? Anybody use EndNotes? Good. 1 person, 2 persons, 3 persons. Good. Because it helps you to not to type again. Okay? And so happens if you're in the field of corporate governance. So if you already did dissertation time, you have put 200 references. For dissertation time, you write many things. So you have 200 references in the EndNotes. So you can use that all the time. So that time you make sure your references are done very nicely, Chicago style and so on. Okay? And this is something side note. Never use the word, you give a paper and say, oh, this is Deutsche, Karoli. No. Spend some time, if you have something cited, spend some time how it is pronounced. Spend some time. It's a matter of your lack of attention. Okay?
It definitely makes a big difference in how you come across. Believe it or not, many a time when I sit with my colleagues trying to hire new faculty members, if they trip on names, you might think, he might have read the paper and he might know what is in the paper. But if you trip on the names, small thing like that gives the impression that you only vaguely know the paper, which is probably not true. But over time, sometimes it's true and it's enough. So, if you trip on those names, and you spend 50 hours reading the paper, understanding it. Why not spend another half an hour just getting
little bit of names,
all the author names right?
It is important.
On that.
You can do that because you see movies and say, oh, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Okay, Schwarzenegger is tough. So if you can pronounce Schwarzenegger, you can pronounce Wimbo. Okay, you can pronounce Chai. Okay, you can pronounce Politsidis.
Yeah, that's going too far.
So spend some time, especially when you go to, I see sometimes very, very smart lady, very smart man giving a presentation and suddenly say, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right or not. You're taking the seriousness out of the presentation.
Yes, see, you immediately the audience was willing to look at you as an expert, somehow you don't feel comfortable thinking of that
Yes,
person.
because I'm thinking about hiring this person to teach in the classroom with the MBA student and going to give a high salary to teach the MBA student, and suddenly I'm finding he or she is tripping with the name and this person is going to teach in a global environment.
Yes.
The manager's name would be Thankamba Baba something, and something like this, and you have to be, without worrying about it, you say, hey, Mr. Tambaka, who are you? Right? It's a professional environment. If I see that person is tripping, I say, I'm not hiring this person. This person is not going to represent me very well, and it's okay, his research is good, and so on. I'll give a backdoor job, but not front job. So I want you to think about, in the context of publishing also, make the references properly. Don't make a mistake. You put my name, Hasan, and you put double S. Okay? Because you read another guy, Kabir Hasan, his name is double S. No, it's a different guy. It means you are not, as he's saying in the right word, what's the word you say?
Yeah, you
Sloppy.
You're sloppy. Yeah.
Okay? So you're not focusing. You're capturing from other paper, cut and paste from other references, putting here. You did not read the paper. That's the first thing come in mind. You make a mistake in my last name means you did not read the paper.
Even though it may be unfair, you might have read the paper.
Yes.
It's just that you didn't practice the saying of the names.
Yeah.
But that's the real world.
Real world.
Too
Perception
bad.
is
You have
reality.
unintended consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
And happens is that as I got older in this profession, and once I completely care about the student, care about young professor, do everything for them. The other part me also tightened as a person, whatever small ability I have, tightened one person and said, I don't want to hear any excuse. Oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Oh, today is not a good day for me. I didn't sleep properly last night. That's why my head is not working. There's no need to give any excuses. Do not give any excuses. Do you have it or not? Are you delivering? If not, say, sorry, I'm not delivering. I'll come back tomorrow and deliver. It is not appropriate for me today. I do not want to give an excuse. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm okay with that. But you coming as a professional and you telling me, who no? No space. Okay? I get carried away with that sometimes.
No.
But this is me. Okay? There's no need to be giving an excuse. Everybody has an excuse. Oh, I was sick, I was this, I was that. All these are good. We are human beings. But when you coming on the stage, you perform your best ability, no excuses, and this is wrong, you say I'm wrong. I apologize, guys. It is not acceptable. I'll go and do this tomorrow and bear the consequences. Separately, you can write a note to the person and say, I was quite embarrassed today with my performance and I didn't have a good day. I didn't want to give an excuse, but I had a good excuse. Okay? I'm okay with that. Okay? But do not have a mentality about being a 100% professional and have all kinds of things in your mind, because the world is too competitive. Okay? You can make a shortcut game, but if you want to compete in the highest possible level. It is possible. There are people like, Coach John is a role model for me. He didn't go to a very big school, okay, even though he's a chair professor in the top finance department in the world. But he did not go to a very big school for his education. But as a PhD student, he published an AER. So suddenly, this guy, unknown school, AER, is something wrong with him. Okay? They shaked him a little bit, and they found out, no, he's standing okay. Then so what I meant is that people can do things, not necessarily all the time. And is it true sometimes this publication, they look at the school name? Yes, they do. But it's not personal. It's a screening. Okay? You do the same thing. You say, what high school did you go to? Bandarache. Okay. I never heard of that. Okay. All right. Yeah. Are they teaching English over there? I'm just making it up. Okay. Stereotyping. So, what island in Borneo? Do they have really that kind of school? Oh, I went to the top 4 school in Jakarta. Okay. So, if you have the stereotype in your mind, other people suffer from the same.
information processing is
So
costly.
if you want to be complaining, to make sure in your own mind you don't stereotype other people, okay? So when a student comes in your class, do not stereotype anything and say, okay, of course there's a screening. You went to top public school, you have a higher expectation. You didn't go to top school as my undergraduate student, come with me after the class. I'll spend some time with you, I'll listen to you, I'll give you time. If you don't have that compassion, why do you expect compassion from other people? For about yourself, okay? The point is I'm making here is, I use the word in the US, we use this word. So it's like, you cannot change your cards. I cannot change my cards. If I didn't go to a top school, I cannot change it. But I can play with the cards I have. Rose had a nice saying about that. Where you were born, what's the word you use? That where you were born, you cannot change it. But how do you live your life? That is a stare stupidity, something like this.
No, that's about that's not quite well. So, there is a James Bond movie, James Bond, right? You know James Bond. So in one of his earlier movies, he says, to be born poor is unfortunate, but to live that way is sheer stupidity. Basically,
so my
you know,
point
you
is
do what
that,
you can.
that I may not have all the access to research publication or journals and data set and so on. I cannot change it. But if I want to play the game, you have to go and start going into the out of your comfort zone in the porch and start running with the big boys. Okay, start running. You might be late running, but start running. Because without that, you're not in the football, in the game. You have to be in the field. You cannot say, my school doesn't have any data, you know, that nobody I can talk to. These are popular words in academia. Yeah, very popular words. There's no data set in my school. They don't support for conferences. Okay, and you know, lot of teaching load. These are all true. Okay, absolutely true. You cannot do research if you're teaching 8 courses. Okay, all right. You cannot do that because in other countries opposite than the US. In the US, the junior professor teach the least, and senior professor teach more. Okay, junior professor teach the least because we have a higher expectation of journal articles from them because they're new, they're smarter, they have better brain. Because most of the Nobel Prize came, not all Nobel Prize came for articles below 40. Okay, so expectation is higher from the junior people. So all this thing I'm saying is that you cannot bring the excuses to, and those are valid excuses, to deter your own growth. It's your own growth. Find out a way. Find out a way to see how you want to. If it means you don't buy a particular cloth this year in the holiday time, but you went to an extra conference or training with that money because school does not pay, because you want to build yourself and grow. I'm giving an extreme example, grow. But if you say my school doesn't do that, I didn't do it. Okay, you don't grow. So my point is that I'm saying it passionately because all Professor Tarazi, myself, Professor John, we are coming from similar sort of mindset, and that's what we are friends with you guys. Come here and so on because we have passion about work, we are sincere about work, and we are not, even though Coase is our big boss, but we are not elitist in our mind. I have nothing to be elitist, but I'm saying people like Coase is not. They are willing to look. Coase is not part of this program, right? He came to Bali. He could go and check out in the Bali a little bit now. In the morning, he called me and said, "Iftekhar, don't go without me." He ate his breakfast in 8 minutes, 10 minutes. He came here because he wants to be part of it. He wants to contribute to see that you develop as this. Professor Tarazi didn't have to come here. He's not part of this. He rushed over here because of this. So in some sense, I give my conversation to them and ask any questions you have, and let's make it a little bit discussion now because and if you guys are taping this, if people want it, you give them a call.
Iftekhar, just
please, without running.
A couple of small points.
Yes, sir.
Let me just pipe it. I want to say two quick things along the lines Iftekhar is saying. One, on the reference, last thing on the reference. Just like we talked about how you mispronounce the names and creates a bad impression, one of the things you should do for references is, update your references. That is, many working papers either forthcoming in a journal or get accepted in a journal. Nowadays, with the internet, it's very easy to make updates on the references.
Yes.
And that again creates a good impression. It's a small thing. A paper is a paper, but sometimes they change the title, sometimes.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
I see sometimes student write a dissertation, let's say in 2014, the paper got rejected in 2015.
Yes.
They're submitting the paper in 2016, but they have in their references such and such working paper, such and such forthcoming, and they didn't change it. And I already read those papers. You know what I thought? The person is using the old paper, is not looking at before submitting.
Exactly. It creates an impression which is not in your favor.
In your favor. Okay.
Now, second thing I want to say, which is along the lines of what Iftekhar was talking, the truth is, finance, economics, management and all that, those professions, academic professions has gotten much more competitive than they used to. The truth is there is, and in fact, high quality entry from Asian countries is one of the major factors. So there is very high quality entry from China, Korea, India, Indonesia, all these countries here. These, in the olden days, it used to be people were all struggling and, again, they didn't go through all these kind of programs which Amin has or Iftekhar is involved with and so on. But now, they are prepared. They're doing all these things that we talked about. They're creating very good impressions. People like us are actually competing for journal space with these people who we taught, in fact, or they have entered at different points from different it's sort of a little bit out of the way, not insider groups. These are not insider groups to the process of publishing, but they're delivering at very high quality. So if you want to play the same game, which you are, all of us are playing the same game, we better be on our toes if you want to play that game successfully. This is an undistinguishable factor. If you look at WFA, which is Western Finance Association, it's a meeting where new entrants, new scholars are recognized. It's a hard to get on the program. It's a selective, but as an unknown, you have a much better shot at getting on the program than many other meetings. Now, once in a while, just for the hell of it, I sit and count all the papers on the program. It's a very selective program, which has at least one Asian co-author. You would be shocked at the numbers that you see. We're talking about over 50%. Over 50% of this very selective program has at least one Asian co-author. What that means is the Asian entry is happening at a very high quality level. Okay? And that changes the whole profession. It is harder to get published, because there is a lot of input. The journal space might have gone up by 20%. I'm talking about entry which is increasing. High quality entry has gone up by 40%. So you can imagine, every rule that Iftekhar talked about, you better be on your toes.
So I have very limited time. I'll finish with a couple of words and then tell you a story about competition. So you see that when you write the letter of the editor, take your time, show respect to the editor, go to the actual website, see who is the editor, put the editor's name, talk about the paper, talk about the contribution, spend some little bit time about writing the editor also. And here's the point I find. 80% immediately editors say it is a not important paper, decide much. 1% to 3% editor immediately thinks, man, this seems like have a possibility. You want to be within the 3 to 20%. Of course, if you can be 1 to 3% is good. But can you get yourself in that position, 3 to 20%? All the conversation I talked today is how to get yourself in the 3 to 20%, make it difficult for individuals to reject your paper. Okay? And I tell you about something that Coase reminded me about competition. And I think saying it in a positively and learning from it, how the competition happened. It's a story that Professor John told me. So Professor John showed up in a big airport in an Asian country. And somebody came in, a young student came in with the name Coase John. So he said, Professor John, I'm taking you to the hotel. So Professor John, thinking the organizer have sent somebody, so go there and so on. On the way, the student is saying, Professor, are you ready with your presentation? And of course, is always a little bit, last minute preparation and so on, A busy person, right? Multiple things. He said, I had done 99%, I had finishing 1%, change the, this and that. And so, Professor, don't worry, give me the jump drive. I will fix everything, background, color, and so on and so forth. Next day, morning, come in, give Professor John the slide, a printout, okay, everything is fixed, and 2 papers in his hand. Professor, after your presentation, we'll talk. These 2 papers are motivated by your work. One of them I finished already. Here is the paper, complete. Other one is not totally complete, and it is completely motivated by your work. If you kindly consider to see a possibility of working with you in the future. 2 paper given. So Coase is asking the organizer, this lady is quite nice, you sent a good person to pick me up from the airport. The organizer says, we don't know her. She's not part of us. She's not our people.
Yes.
Okay?
She was a master's student
And
who was thinking of entering
PhD program. It's not a professor,
next
it's
year.
not a PhD student, it's a master student. Okay? So Coase comes and tell NYU, this is the best student I can get. I'm going to have this student coming here. But guess what? She talked to other professors and Harvard University picked her up and took her to Harvard University.
So she didn't come. We made her an offer, and in fact, she was one of the top offers we made because I had no trouble convincing any of my colleagues to admit her. But she had an offer from Harvard. I think she had an offer from Chicago as well. She ended up going to Harvard.
So my point is,
It's just,
I wanted to give you the example. All the things I talked about, all the things. If you settle for computation less, my regression has 2 more equations. I looked at this statistics, J statistics shows me the competition is a little bit higher. So if you want to really seriously want to compete at whatever level it is, just like us, let's go and start working harder and wake up in the morning as a researcher, as a professor. And if you do that in a continuous basis, there is a possibility to survive. Okay? And survive with happiness. Okay? So wish you patience, wish you tenacity that I started my conversation with, and I end up with again the same. It is the hunger, it is the tenacity, and it is the patience. Keeping these 3 things, let's move forward and see you soon. Thank you very much.
Dia tanya jawab.
Do I get a certificate?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Emang gak ada.
Thank you.
ilmu sosial sekarang ini sudah berkembang